Let's see, everyone, who is joining us today. We've got some people joining us, Dave. Some of our stalwarts. Thank you so much for joining us today. Oh yeah, everybody's hopping on now. The last 2 weeks it was crazy. So the first week we had to cancel was I got the vomiting bug. So literally, like, I think it was like half an hour before we were due to start, I started going, oh my God, I don't feel well. And I started feeling really awful. So that was fun. And then last week I forgot that I was traveling. I'm here with Dave. You can see him here. And we're in the United States. So his daughter got married, my stepdaughter. So we were traveling. So I completely forgot about that. But anyway, thanks. This is our last session. We're just kind of tying up a few loose ends. I'm going to give you a survey to complete shortly. But before we do that, we want to just talk about our last session, which is going to happen on the 26th of July. And Dave, do you want to take them through what's going to happen on the 26th of July? And I'm going to just give you some information about how you guys can sign up for it.
So the 26th of July this is when you guys get to make we have rocket kits that we're going to make. Each family will get a rocket kit. We'll build the kit. You guys will get to decorate it and paint it, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. But basically it's a tube. It's about, what did we say?
We said it was about
it's about a foot long, but how is that? Let's say
I wouldn't say would you say it's a foot long? I'd say maybe 8 inches long. So
about 8 inches and think about an inch in diameter.
About an inch in diameter.
Anyway, they'll have a complete kit. You'll assemble it together. But the thing is you get to decorate it, and you can decorate it with stickers. You can paint it, just personalize it, make it your own. And then when we'll get together in a field, we'll have a launch platform, which will consist of these metal rods that will guide it when it starts to take off, and we'll slide it down on these rods onto a launch platform, connect it up, and then we'll go through a launch of each of the rockets. So you get to watch your rocket go fly and recover, and we'll watch the other participants' rockets also go up, and then you guys will all get to keep your rockets as from participating in the program. So that's what we're going to focus on my understanding. There's some other things you may want to talk about.
Yeah, so that's it. So basically, this is the poster. You'll see this now being advertised through Loud ABC. Some of you know who that is, and some of you don't. And this is the poster. So if you want to go, there's a number there. You got to call Sandra on 086 056 1668. I'll put it in the chat before we leave as well, so you can write it down. Just, I don't know. I mean, we have capacity for up to 22 families. So you guys get first dibs, and then any other families that want to come along, we'll make room for them. But you guys that have been following us over the last couple of weeks, you're the guys that get first choice. And yeah, it's really cool. Like, I've seen rocket launches and they're just brilliant, and I can't wait. So we have tons of time. We may not use that whole time. There'll be, we need to go through how to put your rocket together. And then after that, then you're going to be decorating it. We're going to put it together, and then we're going to launch them. So it's going to be great. So the Redeemer Family Resource Center is where we're going to go. And so we'll be indoors for the coloring in part, and maybe adding stickers and things like that and assembling them. And then we'll go outside and then we'll launch them. And I've got somebody coming on the day, and they're going to be filming it. So hopefully you'll get video of seeing your own rocket launch, which is deadly. Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing that. If you have any questions on that, just let us know. I'm going to put now in the chat a survey, because we're now starting to plan our next round of online sessions. So we'll be running in-person sessions for the adults from September onwards, but we're keen to keep these online sessions going. And we have a few ideas, but it's not up to us. It's up to you guys to decide what you want to do. So while we're talking here, we want you to just complete that little short survey and let us know about what you thought about this session. And then we've given some topics that we've talked about maybe doing, and then you have a chance to tell us exactly in the chat if what you want to do isn't there. You can just write to us and tell us what you want. Okay, So what we're going to do, we always run out of time. So what we're going to do is David's going to review everything we did so far, but he's coming at it from a different point of view, a kind of an interesting point of view. This session is about your questions ultimately. Yeah, Emzy, I'll put all the information in the chat now shortly. While Dave's talking, I'll type away on that. I want to tell you about what I'm doing next. Is I'm going to the Arctic, and I want to let you know about how you can get involved in that. And so Dave's going to talk. You're going to ask questions. So if you go to the Q&A again and put your questions in there, we will get through them. Okay. So we're just kind of tying up some loose ends tonight, and then we will figure out what we're going to do in our next 6-week session. So Dave, you want to share your screen there? And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put that information in the chat about how people can get involved in the rocket launch.
All right, here we go. So we've talked about rockets and rocket motors and all that whole thing, and we've gone through and talked about how we get into space and come back. So I thought the funnest way to finish this up, and the most interesting way, is to talk about a real rocket mission. Probably the most interesting one was when we went to the moon. But we're going to do this in reverse order. So, and I wanted to do it in reverse order so that you could see how we put everything together to actually make one of these things happen. So you think about what you want to accomplish, and then as you go backwards, it determines what you need to be able to do in order to make that happen. So hopefully you'll find this interesting as I go through it this way. Okay, so to start out, we talk about the Apollo 11, where we landed on the moon for the first time, and then we came back. So that was 8 days, 3 hours, and 18 minutes. And what we brought back were the 3 astronauts and 21.6 kilograms of lunar material that they collected on the surface while they were there. Okay. Now, I want to talk a little bit about the capsule. They call this the command module, because this is where they operated everything. So there's a picture of the actual Apollo capsule that was recovered. It's in the museum in Houston at the Space Center there. Just below it, you'll see a picture showing kind of these couches. These are what they were on, each astronaut. There were 3 there. And then in front of them was just all these control panels. So they controlled all their vehicle, all that was going on from this control panels. There's a little window off on the right side there. You can kind of see on the side. And then in the center, you see this picture showing the 3 astronauts, what it was like. Just to give you a sense of what that was like. Think about being in a bed with 3 people for 8 days, 3 hours, and 18 minutes. And I mean, you're going to be in there the whole time. Or equivalent, you see the picture of the truck there. Think about those 3 people all stuck in that cab of that truck for 8 days, right? Oh. And you had to do everything.
You had to eat there.
You had to eat there. You had to sleep there. You were doing all your work there. You were always in your seat. And you had to do all the other things that you have to do. And people always ask about it.
They must have gotten so many cramps in their legs, Dave.
Well, see, the one thing that's different is if you're on the ground in this truck, you're going to get cramps, or even in bed and cramps.
Yeah.
But because they're in space and they're floating along, they're floating. So they're not getting as tired as being in the position stuck in this. So the one big advantage is what on the space mission, they're in what they call microgravity, or 0G. They're floating. So they're not like, getting tired. You know how if you sleep on one's shoulder too long, it gets really sore?
Yeah.
That's not going to happen because they're not putting any load on.
So their muscles don't get stiff like the way they get stiff on Earth then?
There's no load on the muscles, so they're not going to get sore like they would on Earth.
Right, okay.
So that's the one plus. But it's like being in a closet with 3 other people, or a tiny closet for 3 days. And because people always ask, I'll put this picture in here in the lower right corner. You can see, well, how do you do the bathroom in space? Well, you have to use a little bag to pee into a bag, and then you tie it off. But when you have to do number 2, well, there's this bag here. You see this plastic bag, and the top of it, there's a seal. It's kind of a little sticky seal that you put. Here's a picture of an engineer back in 1969, I think it was, demonstrating how you stick it to the area where you need to go, and then you go into the bag, and then that's closed up and put away. So you got to be pretty comfortable doing that with three people that you're in the same. Imagine doing this if you're in the cab of a truck and you got to do that. So these guys had
pooping beside someone in a plastic bag. That's what they did.
Pardon?
They had to poop. Like we're sitting right beside each other, and I go, "Oh, I have to go poo," and they get a plastic bag, and Dave is right here beside me, and I will.
You got to pull your pants down and do the whole thing. So you got to be real comfortable with your immediate neighbors. That's what it's going to be like. But this is what came back, just this, and we'll talk about that a little more when you get to how it all started.
Sorry, can I just ask a question? Because nobody's asking, and I'm amazed they haven't asked yet. How do they pee then? Is it the same?
They have a bag. Basically, they have a bag that they'll go put into, and then it'll seal up. They have a little seal to it. It's like, imagine using a Ziploc bag, and you go into the Ziploc bag.
It's all the bags of poo and pee.
They put it in a little compartment set aside for that. That's probably right behind them.
And can you smell in space? Yeah, you can, because there's oxygen in the capsule. That must have been really smelly.
Well, it could be, yeah, especially when you go. So you got to be comfortable with your neighbor.
Yeah, and one of them, like Isabella says, what if one of them farted? You'd smell it, wouldn't you?
Yeah, but the thing is the air has to be circulated, because they have to clean the air. They have to move the CO2 and other things, and they'll pull off odors and stuff like that as well.
And so they can't clean their bum or anything. Sure, they can't.
Well, they'll have tissues, of course, and that'll just go in the bag. But yeah.
And that's the same place then they have to go and eat.
Well, they'll be, yeah, I'm sure they probably had some hands. You're in the cab of that truck, and everything happens in there for 8 days.
Now, 8 days.
Now, when they get to the moon, a couple of guys get a break for a couple of hours. They're going to hop in the lunar lander and go down to the moon service. And one guy's in there by himself,
pooping and eating.
He'll have a little more room to stretch, but it's just what it is, right?
That was amazing. Seriously, like the commitment to understanding space. That's massive. Okay, all right.
All of that.
Any questions, guys? Put them in the Q&A thing.
Yep, all of that took place in that capsule that you see on the upper right corner.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, how isn't the this is a really good question, MZ. How isn't the capsule completely burnt up? So you see in the top left-hand corner, that actually returned from space, right?
Yep, this
great
is the one
question.
That actually
Thank
came
you,
from space.
MZ.
And on the bottom side of it, they had on this lower part. So you got, it's kind of like shaped like a round pyramid, right? We call it a cone. And the bottom of that cone, this big round flat area, they had a special material there called, it was called ablative material. And what that means is, in a very intense environment, it'll start to char, and it doesn't burn. It just slowly breaks down.
Yeah, it doesn't catch fire. It's a really special material.
Yeah, because of that, it protects, it stays on long enough, and it slowly chars and breaks away, but it protects it from heat coming through and melting the capsule. And we'll show a picture of that in just a minute, but you had to have, like you talked last time.
The same shape is still used to this day, you know. So you look at, you know, I have footage of the Polish guy that went up to space, which I'll show you if we have time. But the capsule that he is coming back in, same shape. The capsule that they've created to go to the moon, same shape. You know, people are still using that same cone shape to this day.
So in the early days, the Soviets used a round ball because they were a little unsure. So they had to put this technical material around it. But we figured out the United States figured out through wind tunnel testing, this is a very stable shape because it always wants to orient the right way naturally. Yeah. And so this is a common shape that they use today. Okay,
so now we know that they were stuck together in a truck almost of shape, and they pooped and peed and ate beside each other. What else?
So when their mission was over and it was time to come back into Earth, just as you see in this picture here on the far right, this bottom was oriented into that. Remember, they're coming in at like super fast, right? Faster than a speeding bullet, and they're hitting that atmosphere, and that causes a lot of friction. Yeah. And it puts a lot of force. The force is slowing them down so fast, they're kind of being squished in their chair because it's like hitting the brakes super hard on a car. You know how you lurch forward? Yeah, or if you're in an airplane when they land. Yeah. Like that's really tough, isn't it? Like when they land and we're all kind of
we were all kind of pushed forward a little bit when we land. So imagine that like 100,000 times faster,
So
right?
instead of facing forward, they face backwards, so they're pushed back into their chair, and it's a lot more comfortable, you know.
Because they're being pulled to the earth.
Yeah.
And don't forget, they're going that fast because in order to be able to go to the moon and also to not get pulled in too quickly to the earth, they had to go really, really fast to overcome the pull of gravity. But now they go in at an angle into Earth so that the atmosphere kind of helps them slow down.
The atmosphere dissipates all that energy. It's like hitting the brakes, only instead of having wheels, they use the atmosphere to slow it down. And it gets slow enough. Then in the middle picture here, they pop out these big parachutes.
And they still do that to this day.
We still do the same thing, and it drops down into the ocean. So in the upper right corner, you see them, these Navy guys in their gear come up and secure the capsule and stabilize it, and they put a float around it, and then they connect it up. The boat comes up to it,
and there's a
crane, and they lift it out of the water and set it on the deck.
Yeah, if you look at the launch of our Polish astronaut, he will be removed from the water in pretty much the same way, except it's not NASA that's doing it, it's SpaceX. So he'll be finished his mission next week. So we talk about splashing down. So, you know, people who like space, they talk about splashdown parties. So when you meet an astronaut, you talk about a splashdown party, and that's what they mean, a splashdown.
So if you remember from the time before, we either land on the water, like the ocean, with parachutes, or some capsules have been designed to land on the land, like the Russian Soviet one lands on the land. They have little rockets that fire just before they touch down to slow it down and cushion it so it doesn't hit real hard.
Yeah.
Or with the Boeing capsule, Starliner.
Yeah.
No, not Starliner.
The Crew Dragon, is it?
No, the Boeing one.
The Boeing one is Starliner. Yeah,
Starliner.
that lands on, that drops on land.
It comes, it has a big pillow that inflates like a airbag for a car, and it lands on that to cushion it.
And just remind you, Starliner was the one. Do you remember we heard about 2 astronauts stranded in space all last summer? That was the test version of that. They haven't ever had a proper mission yet. They just tested it. So that's the design. The design is that it would land on Earth.
The third way is like the space shuttle.
The space shuttle, yeah, lands like a plane.
Like an airplane, yeah.
And the Dream Chaser is sort of.
Dream Chaser is a new version of that. Yeah.
We covered that in the last session.
Yep. Okay. So now we had to get from the moon back to Earth. So this picture I found is a great diagram.
Before you finish, MZ is asking, how heavy do you think that capsule is, Dave?
That's a really good question, and I meant to look it up, but we'll look that up and get
I'll do it. I'll go look up. You do that, and I'll look it up. Yeah.
So back here on the far right, left side, they were on the surface of the moon, and then they take off from the moon in the top portion of the lunar lander. You see the big rocket plume. It comes up and it meets with this command module that's floating around up here. They dock and they transfer their rocks and stuff they got from the moon, and the astronauts go in, and they leave behind their spacesuits, all the junk, their poop and pee, all that stuff is left behind. And then they drop and leave the part that came up from the moon, they leave it in Earth orbit, and the command module turns around and flies back, sends it on a trajectory back to Earth.
Huh? Say that again.
This is the command module, right?
So that's the stuff that gives the power and the.
Yes, and I'll show a picture of that. I think it's helpful.
So where does that go? Where does the command module go?
So the command module consists of this top part, the command module itself, or the capsule, and then the service module, which is right behind it. And I'll show a picture of that to explain it. But anyway, as they get ready to enter the Earth's atmosphere, the capsule pops away from the service module. Service module burns up, and the command module or the capsule turns around to show that flat side, so it hits the atmosphere with that protective ablative coating right here, heat shield we call it, and then that slows down, and then it pops the parachutes. So
what you just said there was so they separate, and the command module bit that just literally falls to Earth and gets burned because of the atmosphere. It burns away.
We'll get the terms right. The service module.
Sorry. The
capsule itself, where they are, is also called the command module because it controls everything.
So okay.
Going to the next picture and we'll see this. So here's the capsule. This is what we saw in the museum. It's just this upper cone-shaped portion of it, right? And you got the 3 astronauts inside. The very top up here is a bunch of parachutes packed in. And
is that where their poo is? No.
No, they would have a little compartment back here, probably in a little between their seats or something where they can reach it.
And they bring it back to Earth then, their poo?
They may have, unless they want to transfer it to the other module. But they have this is other portion behind it, the big cylinder is called the service module.
So that's the bit that just disintegrates when they return.
And that carries batteries, it carries their oxygen, it carries the propellant it needs for the big engine. You see the big rocket engine at the end. So that's used to fly it back to Earth, right? So this is all extra stuff that supports the command module. Well, they don't need it anymore once they get back. So it's discarded, and then just that cone at the top is what comes in and lands.
Amazing, isn't it? And it's such a, do you remember the last session we showed you like this massive spacecraft, and then it was only the bit at the very top that comes back?
Yeah.
All that.
We'll show that again.
Yeah, I'll go look for that. I'll go look for that one. Oh, you have it. Okay, good.
Just we don't know what the weight of.
Oh, I did. It's between 5,000 kilos and 6,500 kilos. And so just so you know, if you go into your cupboard and you look at a bag of sugar, that's 1 kilo. So go and imagine what 5,000 bags of sugar and how that would weigh. That's how heavy this top bit of that weighs.
That's about the weight, I would say, of a large truck.
Of a truck, yeah.
That's about what a truck would weigh.
How much would a car weigh?
About half of that.
About half that. So it's like a really heavy car.
Yeah. So here's this kind of a little complicated part. So when they come into the moon, they've left Earth, they're coming to the moon, they're attached in the upper left corner. You see the command module, service module is the silver part. It's connected to the lunar lander.
Looks like a spider.
And the lunar lander, has 2 parts to it. So they get into orbit around the moon, and then when they're ready, there's 2 that climb into the lunar lander in this top part. And one astronaut has to stay with the command module and
go around the moon. So they're going around the moon.
They stay orbiting the moon, and the other 2 drop down and land on the surface of the moon. Now, you remember before we talked about stacking of rockets. Well, this lunar module is really 2 rockets together.
Really?
So there's this lower portion, the middle picture here, you see this lower portion, that's the lander part. And that's the picture you see on the left with a blue plume coming out the bottom. That's the rocket motor used to safely land on the moon. And then when they're ready to take off, so they get down on the moon and do their stuff. They're only on the surface of the moon for about 2.5 hours.
Yeah.
Outside, they're actually landed on the moon 22 hours. So almost a whole day they're actually there, but they're only outside for about 2.5 hours. So I have to wait till the right time in order to launch and to rendezvous back with their spacecraft, which is what they do in this picture on the lower right side. This comes back up from the moon, connects to the command module. Those 2 guys go back into the command module, close the hatch. They drop off the ascent module, the part that came up, into lunar orbit.
They just leave it around the moon. There. Can I just also mention as well, so there's a lot of steps in that. So they get out of their really stuck space, and they creep into the lander. And when they decide, so they land on the moon, and when they decide that they want to get out, what they have to do is, and I don't know when they put their spacesuits on, but they put their spacesuits on, and in order to be able to open the door, they have to get all of the oxygen out of that.
All the
air out of their lander, so that they can open the door. It's a bit like if you try to open the door in a swimming pool. So you had maybe say you were in a car and you were at the bottom of the swimming pool. You can't open the door unless your car is full of water as well. And it's the same thing, except obviously it's a lack of air. So they have to take all the air out. So they're in their spacesuits. So that takes a while too, doesn't it, Dave? I'd say that takes a couple of hours.
Yeah, they have to.
And then they open the door and they go and they play or whatever. And then they come back and they have to stay in their spacesuits until the air comes back.
So they climb back in, they close the door.
Yeah.
Then they fill it back with air.
Yeah.
so that they can then take their
Take their
spacesuits
spacesuits
off
off and breathe again.
and breathe. And then
It's so complicated.
and then on the upper right corner, you see a picture of what they call the ascent module, of the top portion of the lunar module, that whole thing. Bottom portion is used up, it stays there, and it's the launch platform for the top portion. It flies back up, connects up, and then they're heading back for home.
Yeah, yeah.
So
before we go there, Isabella, you know, she chatted to us and she said, I once met somebody who said nobody went to the moon and Apollo 11 is fake. So I have an answer for that. Would you like to answer it too?
Well, there have been these theories because people didn't understand things when they saw pictures on the moon. Like if you look in the picture in the lower right corner, you notice the sky is black. Well, we know that space is full of stars, right? Why can't you see the stars if they're, you know, they're there on the moon? Well, it has to do with how our cameras and our eyes work. So when we walk outside and we look up in the sky, we see the blue sky, right? But we don't see the stars, but we know they're there.
Yeah.
It's just that the light from the sun comes in and lights up the sky so much, we can't see the fainter stars that are there. A couple of years ago, Niamh and I went to Texas to see the solar eclipse. And when we watched the eclipse is when the moon moves in front of the sun and blocks the sunlight from the sun, right? Well, when that happened, all of a sudden we could see stars in the middle of the day.
In the middle of the day,
around,
amazing.
Because the sunlight from the moon was blocked, and now the stars could start to appear. We could see them because our eyes could see that, but our eyes have to adjust when the light's very intense, and so we don't see the fainter stars. So people misunderstood a picture like this of why, you know, there's no stars in the sky. It's simply because they can't see them. Years ago, I asked an astronaut themselves, I says, well, when we look at the pictures of you guys on the moon, you don't see any stars. And when you're in space, can you see stars? And they say, yes, we can. In fact, they have to turn away from the sun, so they're not looking at the sun, and they look out in space and they see the stars. And in fact, they use the stars to navigate to know where they are. So I asked an astronaut that, and that's how he answered.
Well, let me also add to that, Emzy, if you don't mind, Dave, let me jump in. So I met the sons of the two people that landed on the moon first. So they were the people that landed on the moon first. They were two gentlemen. One was called Neil Armstrong and the other one was called Buzz Aldrin. And I met their sons, Terry and Andy Aldrin and Terry Armstrong. And I was very lucky they gave a talk. And so they said the one thing that really used to hurt their parents was when somebody would say that the moon landing was fake, because in order for them to succeed at landing at the moon, some of their friends died. One of the earliest rockets or one of the earliest capsules exploded when they were testing it because they had too much oxygen and they had a load of oxygen, and then there was a kind of a cable failure. And it impacted their lives so negatively in terms of, like, they were saying one time, Terry was saying that they would go into like a restaurant, and in America, I don't know if it's the same now, but definitely in the 70s and the 80s, you'd go into a restaurant and you get your salad first and then you get like your main course. And he would say, like, they get to order their dinner and the salad would come, and then one person would come over to say, can I have an autograph? And their dad, Neil Armstrong, would sign it. And then somebody else would come over, and literally within minutes, the whole restaurant, everybody was around him. And so he had to basically become a recluse, which means that he basically removed himself from like going to the mall or going shopping or whatever, because he'd just be inundated. So they always were very offended and hurt when people would say that it was fake, because so many of their friends died in order for them to land on the moon. And so many hundreds and thousands of people worked really hard in order for it to happen. And I would say that people say it was fake because for some people, it just seems so impossible that humans could do that and work together and make something which is impossible possible.
Yeah, the other common thing that's cited is, you notice in this picture here, they put a flag up, right?
Yeah.
Well, if there's no atmosphere, that flag will drop down, right? And so what they did is there is a rod along the top of the flag to hold it open so that you could have this kind of a picture. Now, one of the Apollo landings, they also took a camera and set it back away to look at the lander, the lunar lander, because they wanted to record it when it took off, the ascent part to take off. And when it blasted off, the flag started to wave a bit. And they say that's obvious that it's on the ground and that the wind was blowing. Well, that's just nonsense, because
just the rocket.
When the rocket blasted off, those gases were blasted away from that surface and hit the flag and caused it to move. And so ignorance.
Yeah, it's
people
incredible.
Are ignorant.
Like it's amazing. They didn't even have, like, that was all done with what we would say mechanical parts, so very little digital parts. It was amazing. And Isabella says, I told them that they were a liar for saying it's fake. Yeah, but also some people just, it's okay to let them say it's fake, because that's all they can kind of deal with. And it's for lots of reasons that people say that. I mean, I just let them go, but I tell them, well, I met their two sons and they showed me enough stuff to understand that they've been. Anyway, let's keep moving. Yep. Keep your questions coming, guys. These are great questions. Oh, I have two questions over here. Let's just, before we go. So do they automate the rocket? Emsy wants to know.
Okay. So back in that time, this is over 55 years ago, much of all these things, so the answer is yes and no. So, for example, when they went to land on the moon, the lander was on a programmed path. So a control system was guiding it to come down.
So explain what a control system is.
Well, it's a system on the spacecraft, could be on an airplane, where it kind of controls the thing and makes it follow the path that it's supposed to follow. It's like in the modern airplanes that we fly around the world. The pilots often have what's called, to put it on auto control.
Yeah.
So the plane is flying itself. It knows the path it's wants to do, and it's constantly keeping it on track. When they need to, the pilots will step in and take control of the plane. If they need to correct or do something, they can step in and do that. Well, the same is true with the spacecraft.
And I think in the home, you will see that in a kettle. A kettle knows when to switch itself off, because they've got a control system in there to switch off when it boils. Your fridge is constantly turning itself on and off to maintain a constant temperature. So there's all these automatic systems everywhere. So that's what a control system is.
We see them very commonly today, even vacuum cleaners.
Vacuum cleaners
drive around by themselves and bump into things and redirect. Back then, it was 55 years ago, it was a lot, we didn't have the same technology, but aircraft, we had learned how to control aircraft, and so we did the spacecraft. However, to answer your question, as they were coming down, there was an unexpected problem that this old-fashioned computer, way before we have the computers we have today, this thing got overloaded and would stop working. So the astronaut, Neil Armstrong, who was the pilot for this, took over and manually flew it down and finished the landing. As they had to
override the computer.
Yeah, as they got down close to the ground, he realized he had to move where it was going to land to a different place, because it was very rough and didn't want to land there. And so he actually took over the controls and then landed it. So it's a combination of automated and manual capability that they had.
So a couple of things. So MZ wants to go, is anyone else here? Yes, there are. So what I did today, and you'll find in the survey that I sent you, and I'll send you again, is some people have told me that they find all the chatting between each other is very distracting and they wanted to listen to it. So I turned it off today just to see which you prefer. And in the survey, you can say, yes, I want to be able to talk to everyone here, or not. So that's the answer to that. And then Isabella says, I don't trust AI. Well, I don't know. We'll know in time. We can do a whole segment on AI in our next group of sessions if you want.
So here's a good one. Let me just comment to that too, because AI is a new technology that's coming out that we're wondering about, right? And we hear good stories about it, and we hear bad stories about it. It's like, what is the truth? What is the truth? Did we land on the moon or not? Because some people think we did and some people think we didn't. Well, we want to help you try and understand it so that you can decide for yourself.
Yeah. That's it. So I'm putting the survey up again if you haven't already completed it. So Dave, what's next?
Okay, so remember we talked at the very beginning about what it takes to get to the moon. So remember, I'm going to show, I pull this diagram up and I put it sideways so we can fit it on the screen. But this is the Saturn V rocket for the Apollo 11 mission.
Yeah, and I'm going to
And
go
if
back
you-
to the video where we had that when we visited the center.
And
So
if
you keep talking.
And if you look at on the far right, there's this kind of pointy thing. That's a cover with a little rocket on it. It's an emergency thing to pull the capsule away if there was a problem with the rocket during flight. But that cone underneath that, the next thing you see there is called the command module. That's all that came back from all of that stuff that you see here. That's all that we recovered. So right behind it is the service module that brought them back. And then there's this covered section, kind of like a cone shape too. And inside there, it's kind of hard to see, but that's where the lunar module was. So it was transported up right behind this. And then these other things are the stages. Well, remember, stages are simply just rockets. So we got the first stage, this big thing on the left. Then on top of that's a second stage. And then there's a third stage. And then you've got the command module, which is made up of two rockets, one to land on the moon, one to take it back up. And then there's this service module, which flies them back to the Earth. So it's just this stack of rockets.
Yeah.
And then you got the capsule where the people.
Let me just quickly, let me just quickly go to back to the video that we showed you of that. So this is Dave in front of that rocket that never flew, right? So this is him. So that's that top bit that he was just talking about. You see it? And that bit there, you see where my mouse is? That's the bit that returns to Earth. That's the bit with the three people in it as if they're in a truck all the time. So this was when we visited. And I think if I just bring this video on a bit, I think we can look down. I think we look all the way down.
That return.
Let's see. I think we look down the rocket. Maybe we okay, not to worry. All right, Dave, continue. I'm stopping my sharing. You can continue.
So anyway, this gave us a chance to tie everything together by talking about the lunar mission. And I went backwards because I wanted to show how all this works together. So in order to make that big rocket fly, you see these engines at the back of the rocket here on the left. Here's me standing by one of those engines. Those are called the F1 engine, right? And then here's a picture of Niamh at the back end with all 5 engines.
It's huge.
So the F1 engine produced 1.5 million pounds of thrust. That's 6.67 meganewtons.
That doesn't really make sense to you. Don't worry about it. Yeah, it's very.
The Saturn V had 5 of those engines. So that's 7.5 million pounds of thrust. What is that equivalent to? So I kind of tried to figure out, well, what's that something like we might know today? Well, the picture right below is the A380 Airbus. That's the largest passenger plane in the world.
That has 2 stories, doesn't it?
And it carries, it's 2 stories, yeah. And it carries up to a maximum of around 800 or so passengers, right? That rocket power that they had to have to send to the moon is like it's the same as 25 of these A380 airplanes all taking off at the same time, carrying 21,325 passengers.
Yeah.
So that gives you a sense, hopefully, how big this thing was and how powerful it was just to bring that little capsule back that's the size of a big truck.
It's a lot of amazing. It's amazing what people can do when they put their minds to it. So most planes, just so you know, that's a very big plane. Most of us haven't been on a plane that big. So if any of you are lucky enough, like to go to America or to go on a flight that's like 5 or 6 hours long, they'll usually have about 300 people on those planes.
Yeah,
300.
Smaller.
So this one has 800, so it's way bigger. And Dave's saying that it's the amount of power that the rocket had to go to the moon was equivalent to 25 of those planes. So that means it's equivalent to like 75 of the kind of planes that we're on all the time. It's crazy, amazing.
So that's just trying to give you a perspective. But here we tie in, we started off our discussion with how rocket motors work, rocket engines work.
Yeah.
And we talked about rockets, and then we said getting into orbit where we had to stack rockets and do stuff in space, and how we came back from space by entering into the atmosphere and slowing down with the heat shield to protect it.
Yeah.
Popping parachutes or landing like the space shuttle. So this is a mission that ties that all together.
Amazing.
So we were able to evaluate this mission, and we went from backwards at the end to forwards because we had to see what is it going to take to get that capsule to land with those three people. And it came back to building this huge rocket at the end. That's how we do it in engineering often. We say, what are we going to do at the end? And we work backwards to figure out what do we need to start with to get there. And Niamh's just brought up something about the newest rocket.
Yeah, I'm going to share this, Dave. You can go through this. Yeah, because we've kind of come to the next wave of returning to the moon, and some people feel Mars even. So let me put this up.
So this is the newest rocket, which is bigger than the Saturn V, that we're going to use to return to the moon and probably go to Mars. And remember that whole first stage? Well, we use that first stage to get that, that big massive stage with those 5 engines that Niamh was standing in front. What they're doing now is they're recovering that stage so it can be used over and over again.
Gets caught.
And they've got these grabbers that catch it mid-flight. That's going to make it more affordable to do this, because before we had to throw everything away.
Yeah, it's amazing.
So we're making great progress in technology.
Where we're not wasting as much as we would have before.
Yeah, we're finding ways to reuse things. And
so you see here, you got a kind of a table at the bottom. See here, it's like a table. Let me see if I've got my mouse on. Let me turn my mouse on over here. How do oh, Dave. There. Yeah, so you see here, let me see if I can't seem to find my mouse. Where is it? Why can't I see where I am? Oh yeah, here I am. Yeah. So you see, why can't I see where I am? Oh, weird.
Just describe it.
Yeah, so you see the bottom is like a table, and then you have like a silvery piece, and then you've got a dark piece. So the table is the launch pad, right? And then the silvery piece is the first rocket. First stage. Dave says first stage. First rocket. And then you've got the main part then, which is called Starship, which is the second rocket or the second stage. And so that first stage lifts off, with the other piece on top. And then when it runs out of fuel, it actually reverses back to that landing pad. And those two things that are sticking out, it grabs it. It's like, what? Now, they're still testing this. So that top part, Starship, they were just testing the engines last week, and it exploded on the table, on the launch pad and everything. So they still have a bit to go.
I don't know if you saw that because I was still sharing. So yeah, that's probably why you couldn't see it. I was still sharing. So
oh, that's probably why. Yeah. So let me see.
Can you guys see the rocket she's talking about?
Can you see the star? It says SpaceX Starship test flight. Can you see that slide? I can't actually get out of it. I don't know what's going on. Oh, look here.
Stop sharing.
How?
You go right here.
But I'm kind of stuck in some weird.
Maybe because I had my thing up. Can you close that? Maybe that'll close it.
I don't know what I'm doing.
We're having a little technical issue.
Oh, here we go. Let me see if I can stop share. Oh, here we go. I'm back. Oh my gosh, that was scary. Yeah. Oh, I don't know what was going on there. Anyway, yeah. So that's the Starship. So it's amazing. Let's see. Do you know about the AN-225?
Dave? Yeah, the AN-225 was a Soviet/Ukrainian, if I believe, cargo plane, which is the largest cargo plane that's ever been built. And it was so big that they could carry large pieces of space hardware on top of it, much like the 747 would carry the space shuttle. So they mounted on top. So yeah, that has a great history.
Okay. All right. Let's talk about what happened last Wednesday. So I'm just going to go into my internet for a second. So last Wednesday, so what's really interesting about all these launches and stuff that are happening, up until, I want to say, maybe 2 or 3 years ago, most of the launches were done by NASA, and then the European Space Agency would put their astronauts on board, or Russia. And now China obviously has its own launch and it has its own space station. But we've entered into this new era where it's kind of become commercial. So what I mean by that is that people can pay to spend like a couple of weeks on the International Space Station. It's kind of the thing I'd love to do. And so last week we saw these 4 people launched to space. They were supposed to go in May and they had a problem. Anyway, they eventually took off. And this is being run through a company called Axiom. And Axiom hire SpaceX, the people that made the big rocket that we just saw, and they borrow their system, which is their rocket, which is the Falcon 9, that's reusable, and then their capsule, Crew Dragon. And their missions are much shorter. So the missions from space agencies like NASA and the European Space Agency and Russia, they're usually 6 months minimum at a time. These are only 2 weeks long. So Peggy Whitson, this is the crew. Peggy Whitson, I love her. She's amazing. She retired from NASA a couple of years ago, and she was the commander on board this mission. Now, Isabella or MZ, they were talking about automated missions. So this is all automatic. So they just sit there and the rocket takes off, and they are automatically then orbiting Earth and automatically then lining up with the space station. So it's making it easier. So we had an Indian astronaut, we had a Polish astronaut, Slavoj, and we had a Hungarian astronaut, Tibor. So Slavoj actually was recruited by the European Space Agency as one of the reserve astronauts. So this is like a half a European Space Agency mission and a half a kind of a commercial. So the Poland paid a lot of money for Slavoj to go on that. And that's kind of what's happening nowadays, which is amazing. So let's look at their launch. So I'm just going to show you a little bit of the launch. You may not be able to hear it because it's through YouTube, but so you see that it looks very like all the other launches we've seen before of our astronauts that are going to space. You have the Falcon 9 rocket, which is a SpaceX rocket, and then you have the cone thing at the top. That's the Crew Dragon again, which is that cone shape.
It's the capsule.
The capsule. Sorry, what did I say?
Cone thing.
The cone. Sorry, I'm doing too many things at once. The capsule, and they just took off. This is the countdown: 10, 9, 8, 7, 6. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Perfect launch. And their rocket is reusable, so that rocket comes back to Earth. That's the SpaceX system.
3 nations, a new chapter in space takes flight.
So they launched, no problem at all. So I'll stop playing this because I'm conscious of time. And then the next thing then that happened was they arrived at the International Space Station, so that you can see their approach. So it's amazing. So all this is kind of automatic at this stage. They have like iPads and stuff on board. I'll just turn the sound down. And they have iPads on board. So that's them in the capsule. And this is, they have like a lid on the top of the capsule, which connects with that docks there. So this is approaching the International Space Station and they dock. So it's a bit like a key in a door. So this is their Crew Dragon capsule docking with the International Space Station. They wait for the two sections to be at the same pressure, and then they float in. This is what happens with all, they open the hatch, they float in. That's Peggy coming in now. It's Peggy Whitson, the commander. That's Slavoj, our Polish astronaut from the European Space Agency. We have then the Indian astronaut, I think, comes in, and then Tibor, the Hungarian astronaut. And so the existing crew then welcome them, and every time then they have a press conference. So they're up there a week tomorrow. So they have another week. So they'll be returning to Earth around about the 10th or the 11th of July. So that's a very short mission. So this is what's happening now as well. So it's a really interesting time for you guys. You're kind of at a time when, you know, you're going to see more and more kind of normal people going to space. Yeah. Anyway, so let's keep going. If you have any questions, don't forget to ask us in the Q&A. I think the last thing we'll do is we'll talk about what I'm doing next and how they can get involved. What do you think?
Yeah, go for it.
Keep your questions coming, guys, as well. So let me just share my screen. You see, I'm going to go to this now. Let me share my screen. Okay. So some of you have, you know, I've spoken about this before. I went down to the South Pole in November 2023. Yes, continue to share. And what I'm doing now is I'm going to the North Pole and up at the very top of the world. And what I'm doing is I'm going on this ship. This ship is called a schooner, and it's 45 meters long. It was made in 1945. It was initially a ship for fishing. And then it got bought out by somebody. And what they do is they charter or they rent it out to different groups of people. And I'm joining a group of people that run this initiative for 20 people like myself. So somebody who likes to explain science or somebody who likes to make art, we're all going to be on this ship. And so I really wanted to make this a very Dundalk-centric mission. And so have you seen, do you know where the town hall is in Dundalk? Do you know where the town hall is? So if you know where the town hall is, there is a painting just on the side of the town hall. And it's of this man here.
Big mural painting.
Hmm?
A big mural painting.
A big mural, yeah. A mural is a painting that's on a wall. And it's this person here. It's called Leopold McClintock. And he was from Dundalk. So his house is a white building right across the road from St. Vincent's. And if you drive around there, you'll see there's a plaque in his name, but we don't really know an awful lot about him. So I'm going to be on this mission for like about 2.5 weeks. And so I'm going to be taking videos and pictures, and I'll come back and I'll do a talk in the library about it. And I really want to talk about this guy, Leopold McClintock, because he was amazing. And he was from Dundalk. So a long time ago he was born in 1819. So that's over 100 years ago. And when he was 11, I don't know if any of you guys are 11, but when he was 11, he joined the British Navy and off he went to sea. And he spent the rest of his life at sea. He loved it, absolutely loved it. His uncle took care of him first, and he worked his way up through the ranks. And he got involved in some really important expeditions around the Arctic area. And so he got known as the Arctic Fox. And the most important mission that he was involved in was trying to figure out what happened, another expedition, a British expedition led by this guy, Franklin. And it was thanks to the way Leopold McClintock designed missions that they found him. But not only that, all the missions that happened down the South Pole, and you may have heard about Ernest Shackleton, and you may have heard about Robert Scott, these people that wanted to get to the South Pole first, they copied his method of how to plan ahead. And he would lay down supplies. He would have teams that would lay down supplies ahead of a mission, very similar to the way they planned the Apollo mission. That missions went ahead and they prepared, and in exactly the same day. So that was Leopold McClintock's way of doing things. So he was from Ireland. Amazing. And not only that, he was from Dundalk. So what can you do to get involved? Well, what you can do is I want you guys to come along with me. And when I was in the South Pole, I managed to send some postcards from the Antarctic. And so I sent them, and then I was kind of going, for climate change, that's not very good, to be printing off postcards all the time and then posting them. And so I thought, to save energy for climate change and paper, why don't I print off an eternal postcard that I'll bring with me on all of my missions. So I printed these off. I've put them in the library in Dundalk and in Dundalk Credit Union. And this is the card, what it looks like. So you leave the left-hand side clear because I'm going to stamp that. But on the right-hand side, I want you to put your name and where you come from, Ireland, and then just leave a message. I'm coming to pick them up this weekend, probably Friday, actually, not Saturday, Friday evening. I will pick them up. I will put them in my bag. And every time I leave the ship and go on different snow missions and stuff like that, I'll bring them with me and I'll stamp them when I'm there. And when I come home, I'll put the ones that I got in the library back in the library, the ones I got from the credit union back in the credit union, and you go in and you pick them up. And I'm hoping to have another big mission later in the year. And if I do, I'll let you know. So you drop the same card off at the library or Dundalk Credit Union. I'll come in and pick them up. And when I'm finished, you get another stamp. And so when I go to space, these cards will be coming with me so you can be a part of it. I'm going to be sharing a room with somebody I don't know. Her name is Sylvia, and she's a composer. So there's people who paint, and there's people who sew, and people who compose music, and people who take video and record sound on the ship with me. We have to be protected by 4 people. So they'll give us a designated zone to get out onto the snow or onto a glacier to work. And we'll be there for a much longer period of time, like about 3 hours or so. So Dave helped me. I had to go to a specialist shop and I had to get loads of thermal underwear and stuff to protect myself. But the 4 people have guns, because you know why? Why do you think, Dave, the people around me would have guns?
You should get into trouble. No, because of polar bears.
Polar bears. There is a higher activity of polar bears this year than any other year. So what they're doing is while I'm sitting there, I'm going to be writing and taking pictures and stuff, and I'll have your postcards in my bag. They're keeping an eye for any polar bear attacks because there's been an increased activity. Mad. And if you go to the library, you'll see a poster on the wall and you'll see a QR code that takes you to, I'm going to put the link in here now, and you can download an activity pack where you can do some coloring in, and we go through some of the animals at the Arctic. I'm hoping to meet narwhals. I mean, they're like unicorns. Narwhals, walruses, polar bears, Arctic foxes, Arctic rabbits or Arctic hares. And then there's an Arctic fox, a rabbit. Anyway, they're all there, and you'll find out about them. And I'm going to post a quiz as well. And then, complete the postcard. But if you want to leave me something special, it can't be too big. You can also drop it off at the library and they'll give it to me. I visited some schools and they've sent me their own pictures and stuff as well. So is there anything else I've left out about that? I don't think I have, have I?
It's good.
Yeah. So let me put the link to the download. You can download this activity pack for free in the chat, and we'll see what questions are left. So Dave, you take a look at some of those questions there. What's she saying? Okay, so let's see, no more questions. So we'll get some tomorrow. You will have the best time. I know. I can't wait, Michelle. I can't wait. Let me put the link to download the activity pack. So what else, Dave? So repeat again what we're going to be doing for the rocket on our rocket workshop, and then we'll finish up with 3 minutes.
Right. So again, we get a chance for families we'll get together and each will get a rocket kit, which will contain all the parts to make the rockets. So there's the body, the nose cone, tail section with the fins, and the place where the motor goes. It'll have a parachute. And we'll go through the whole process to assemble it. And then of course you get to decorate it and personalize it the way you like to.
Mm-hmm.
And then when everything is ready, we'll go into a field. We'll have a launch platform set up, and then we'll go through and launch each family's rocket.
Yeah,
and you'll
it's
get
amazing.
a chance to see your rocket go off as well as the other ones that are there.
Yeah.
And recover your rocket and have a chance to actually join the space age.
Yeah, it's going to be great. I can't wait to show you. I'm going to see if I can find footage of the one that we did before. But anyway, so if you want to join us, you know where to go. We'll hopefully see you at the end of July. The reason we're waiting so long is that I've got to head off to the Arctic, but that first Saturday that I'm back, we hope we'll see you in the Redeemer Family Resource Centre at 1 p.m. Sorry, I put down 12, 1 p.m. If you want to personalize your rocket, bring stickers or whatever, and you can just put them on the side, and off we go, right? Okay.
Off we go.
Okay, well, we hope you enjoyed our sessions. We'll be back soon with another topic. I hope you've completed the survey to give us ideas of what we need to do next. But thank you so much, everybody. Thank you, Dimitri and Denai, and we'll see you soon. Thank you, Michelle. Thank you, Isabella. Thank you, MZ. And we will talk again soon. Have a great Tuesday. Okay. And Casper for the rocket. Let's see what he's saying here. Can you get the address again, please, for the rocket? Oh yeah, let me put it in. So it's the Redeemer Family Resource Center, and you're going to call or text Sandra on. And let me just get the number up here. You're going to call her on. Let me just get it. 1 second, please. 1 second, please. Where is she? You're going to call her on. Make sure I have it right. 087 056 1668. Okay. So that's what you're going to do. You're going to text Sandra to book your place. Okay. And thank you, Sean. We're not online next week, Rohan. We're going to take a break because I'm off to the Arctic, but I will be putting videos up and we'll let you know. Keep an eye on my Instagram. So my Instagram account is Dr. Niamh Shaw, and you'll see everything there. Okay. And I'll try and kind of send you exercises and things that you can do, and we'll talk about it afterwards. But hopefully we'll all meet in person on the 26th of July. Okay. Bye, everyone. Bye.